All right, Hardin County, this is part 2 of the March 6th commissioners meeting. I talked a little bit about 1:30. Sharon Houston came over. They were moving all the resident files over to the North Annex. They're going to have the Hardin Hills building empty in the next 2 weeks. I don't know if that means all the desks and everything are going to be out of there, but for the most part, everything's going to be out. Vancrest comes in at 2 o'clock, right? So Mark White, and I didn't catch the gentleman's name that was with him, but Mark White is the VP of Vancrest from, I think it's in Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana is what they're out of. So they came, we had Tim Thomas there, and Dennis Beverly was there, and so we were all excited for this big announcement. Well, guess what? I think it's partly because I was recording the public meeting. They kicked us out, and so we didn't get to be there. Which, you know, if you're following any sunshine laws, this is kind of a doozy. That so they kind of question, you know, why are we having this in open session? You know, because they were presumably signing these documents with Vancrest, right? Brad Bailey was there, Katie was there, Mike Bacon was there. I think that was it. Sharon Houston was there. And so they quick and hurried up, went into executive session for G1, right? Which is buying and selling a property. But that's only if you have an unfair advantage by revealing that information, which you wouldn't have because Vancrest was gonna sign the documents, right? So there is no unfair advantage. So why it would need to be closed, you know, under G1 is not makes sense to me. The other thing, unless I missed it, I did not hear them do a roll call. So they agreed on executive session, but no roll call. That's a big no-no. So if this ever would go to court and they would say, you know, you can't do that. You have to do the roll call. You have to. So maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear it. And so they went into executive session. We stood out in the hallway for a long time, had a nice little chat, so enjoyed that. But went back in, and it was great because Vancrest, you know, it was kind of a meeting for the news media. Vancrest, you know, answered any of your questions. You'll be able to see that in the paper. I asked questions about, you know, how many employees will be there, and the timeline, because that's been always the big thing, that it's like the beds went up for sale. Well, they had to be up. You had to get your CO in before July, before you close the building, right? So we got that like a week or two before the building closed. And then you have a year from that date to get another CON to somebody to purchase that. So Vancrest obviously stepped up. They wanted to purchase our beds, our Ohio licensed beds. And so you only have a year, right? You have a year to do that. And so Vancrest said, okay, we won the bid. We're going to do these beds, but then they have to go get their CON, which means they have to have blueprints. They have to have an optional 10 acres of land. They have to, you know, follow all these rules. And so they're working diligently, following these rules, and then they have to do that, and they have to secure the CON for those beds, which they didn't take the 78. They only took the, is it 68 or 64 beds? So we lost a few of those. So they got their CON just 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, it takes a long time. So they got their CON 2 weeks ago. Now they've come to sign some kind of buying agreement with the commissioners, I guess, to buy them, to purchase the beds now that they have their CON. And then, let's see, they said that they have 2 months till they can, so they have, out there at Hardin Hills, they real quick, right at the end, you know, everything's always rushed, so right at the end, they had to section off 10 acres with the Hardin Hills building on it so that could be an option to Vancrest. I don't think Vancrest wants that as an option because they'd have to tear down the building to make that work. And talked about it in the meeting as far as, you know, they're not interested, they're interested in good, clean, you know, good staffing and a modern building. So revamping an old building just isn't going to do it. So, so if you remember, our Hardin Hills is going to be done and cleaned out in 2 weeks. And then Vancrest has, he thought, 2 months in order to secure other land, is what I'm understanding, right? So they're gonna, in 2 months time, they should be able to say, okay, this is where we're gonna build the new facility. Hopefully it's in Kenton, hopefully it's close. It would certainly help Kenton's revenue stream if they were in town, unless they give them an incentive and you cut that, right? So you give an incentive to a company so that they come, and then we don't have any more revenue out of it. So, you know, kind of something you have to weigh out, but hopefully, so they have 2 months to determine. So they have that option of that land for the next 2 months until they say no. So why it needs to be cleaned out in 2 weeks, I don't know. So then the other timeline that they have is at 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, they now have 2 months to break 2 months, 2 years to break ground, right? So I think you still have to show, maybe, I don't know, maybe you can sit on this for 2 years, or maybe they have to show some kind of planning is continuing to happen every 6 months. But they have to break ground. I mean, it would take a significant amount of planning just to break ground in 2 years. And then at that 2-year mark, then you have to check in every, I think it's 6 months, or 3 months, every 3 months, to show that you are continuing to make construction progress. So you can't just say, oh, we broke ground, and not make any progress, because you still have to pay. It's $5,000 per bed for these certified nursing home beds. So they're paying 64 times $5,000 every year to hold on to these beds while they're building over here. So it's a definite financial strain. So you want to do it as quickly as possible. But remember, they're also building a place over in Wyandotte right now. And so, you know, cash flow for them. How much did they say? I think they have 14 businesses right now. And it was kind of interesting because he said it's not necessarily because we're greedy that we want all these businesses, but rather, you know, it's hard for a small town to hold on to a whole nursing home, right? So Vancrest, they have their supply buying is spread out on their 14 estates. You know, the legal fees are spread out on 14 estates, and you know, their policies and their HR and their, you know, all those hierarchy of business practices are shared, where when a community does it, you know, you have HR, you have accounting, you have, you know, all these things, and you're carrying the whole weight of it. So it does make sense in this day and age, kind of like us, where we're offloading our county homes. They're there to kind of pick up the slack. So kudos to them for you know, taking the risk to take on Hardin County, even though it wasn't really in their plan. So still looking forward to seeing them come. He said that he will come back and talk to us again once they can reveal all the plans and the information, so that we can get that out to the people. So here's, I should have told you this, here's the strange news that I wanted to share with you. As we're talking to Vancrest, right, it is brought up about Hardin Hills. From the beginning, we've always had 3 auctions, you know, medical supply auction, a regular auction, and then a decommissioning or deconstruction auction would be after everything's out. So we've got moving boxes, we got all the employees gone, the place is 98% empty, and they want it all the way empty in the next 2 weeks. But they're not. So I asked them, when is the deconstruction auction? And all three of the commissioners have these little smirks on their faces, as like, well, we're gonna consider it. You know, it's like, what do you mean consider it? This was what we were gonna do because the building is, you know, old and unusable and we don't want it for anything. And so just really interesting. You should go back and watch the video to see for yourself. But they're definitely totally backed off the whole idea of this auction to, you know, they were going to sell the doors and the lighting and the wiring and the copper and the, you know, anything that was in there of value they were going to get rid of. So why they're not doing that, why they're on a time frame of 2 weeks, you know, right at this time with Vancrest coming. Like I said, I don't think Vancrest wants that property. Well, so here's the other thing. It pays to go to all these meetings. You get little bits and pieces of everything. So I was at the legislative meeting at the city of Kenton with Holly, where she's presenting. So I told you in part 1 that they're going and changing the legislation of what M1 and M2 manufacturing properties can have on them to kind of shore those up and make them more modern. And so the whole question is, the zoning beforehand was just Jones Road farmland. Well, now that Hardin Hills is kind of all done and out of the picture, they're going to come back again once the legislation's done and once they have a little bit better picture, possibly come back and ask for rezoning again. Maybe not the M2, maybe just the M1, which is a lighter manufacturing project, but for all of it, right? So all of the Jones Road 50 acres, the other acreage on the other road where Hardin Hills is, you know, anything that's kind of an infirmary farms, to go ahead and rezone that to manufacturing. Again, we do have manufacturing coming back to the United States, so we need to be on top of these things. The good thing about zoning it M2, because the first thing I thought of when they were backing off that tearing down or getting rid of the building, is that you're going to use it for housing, you know, drug rehab or some other facility that would use this building. That's why you're not tearing it apart. But an M2, I don't think is going to allow them to do that. And so, you know, at least we would keep that kind of situation from happening. Now, they don't have to sell all those properties together. You're just rezoning it together so that it's kind of ready. I know the Spearmans were involved a lot with the first time with the M2 manufacturing on Jones Road, and because their house, you know, Jones Road is here and their house is kind of on the other side of the road, behind some woods and stuff. And so I know it's a big concern of what goes in there, which it can be something that looks like Mid-Ohio. I mean, that looks really nice on the other side of the road. So it doesn't mean that it has to be anything bad, especially when they're bringing in that legislation and kind of shoring it up so that, you know, you're not going to get some crazy chemicals in there. Although, come to find out, we have some pretty crazy chemicals in, you know, Kenton and south of town there that you just don't even know about. They just are there and they do their thing and they don't bother anybody. So go figure, you know, the things that we don't know. But definitely interesting dynamic with the commissioners, and keeping their mouths closed. And you know, but we've seen that. I tell you, we've seen this before with the commissioners where you think, oh, they've got something, you know, they're hiding something, and it's not really, you know, it's not really the situation. So you know, we'll see. We'll definitely be keeping an eye out for anything pertaining to that building. And of course that zoning will be coming up. I think the legislation has to go 3 reads. So it's not even up to city council yet. And then they'll have to go through the zoning process. So it's going to be a little while till we see anything zoning wise there. But we certainly want to keep our community in mind, and not putting any housing out there in that Hardin Hills building, I don't think would be a good idea. So anyways, all right. Lots of big news today. Thanks for sticking with me, and I will talk to you later. All right, bye.